Sure was fun, wasn't it? First round of the NHL Draft, providing us with one of the more memorable draft nights in recent memory. A couple of big surprises on the draft board, a couple of big trades that shake up the Central Division. Plus, at the end of it all, the Preds have their guy. Joakim Kemell is coming to Nashville. We'll hear from him today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
Your Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day every single day. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer and editor on theforecheck.com, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I am Ann Kemell today. I'm a writer at ontheforecheck.com.
Yeah, so the Predators get who some people say, if it wasn't for the guy that everybody thought was going to go number one falling to number four, the guy a lot of people think may be a steal in the draft. Joakim Kemell, a forward out of Finland, comes to Nashville with the 17th overall pick. A guy a lot of people had ranked in their top 10. And a guy, including our very own Eric Dene, thought was going to go much higher. So, instant reactions, Ann. Seems like a pretty good pick for Nashville, yes?
I think this is a fantastic pick for Nashville. And I think, like you said, this totally came out of nowhere. I don't even think Nashville probably had a lot of discussion about this, in the sense that nobody thought that this player was going to be around for 17 pick. And I can just imagine them sitting at their table like, don't make eye contact with anybody. Maybe nobody will notice that he's still available. Like, maybe. I love this pick for Nashville. I think they got, they got obviously somebody with a great shot. That's what he's known for, a great shot. But I also think they have a player whose game they can kind of refine some things, and he can be a really good fit for Nashville. So this was so exciting. This was a complete steal for Nashville. I don't think that they could have walked out of round one feeling better about what they did.
Yeah, and it seems like Joakim Kemell brings a scoring dimension that the Preds really don't have, aside from a Philip Forsberg, and that he is a dynamic goal scorer. And I think that's something, there's a couple of good playmakers in the Predators system right now, but Kemell really seems to be that missing piece, that guy that can put the puck in the net, very much heralded for his shot. One of an exciting finisher. We know Eric Dene said he has maybe one of the best releases in this draft. EP Ringside said he's a guy that anticipates space well, never really gives up shooting opportunities. Athletic calls him an exciting prospect. So rave reviews across the board. And it kind of makes you wonder why he fell, because you look at, some of his stats over the past couple of years. I mean, he scored 6 goals in 5 games in the under 18s this year. And JYP in Finland, 15 goals as a 17-year-old in 39 games. And that's very impressive for somebody his age, because we've seen, we do see sometimes that draft prospects kind of struggle or, not have as big of a role in their first full year at the pro level. And this is a guy who's done very well and was managed to be a depth beat for JYP this year. So, this is a guy that, ticks a lot of boxes. And, the Predators were in a situation where they could jump all over him and add him to their scoring core.
Yeah, I think this is huge. What you said is right. You have somebody who comes in and he has just a very natural talent. And the pieces that the Predators are going to want to develop around his game are something that are relatively easy, not relatively easy, but easier to teach than the natural talent things that he comes in with. some of that shooting and all of that, you can refine that. But this is somebody who really has just an innate talent for that. And I think that that's great. But this is also somebody, like you said, he's a boy who has played against men and done very well. And so I think this is a fantastic piece for the Predators. And when you think about where the Predators are now, obviously, this player he's going to need some time and development and all that kind of thing. But you can definitely see as you look ahead, a couple of seasons, you can see where this could be a really important piece for Nashville. And, again, I just keep coming back to how did he end up still available at 17? I mean, the chaos at the beginning of the draft maybe confused some people. I don't know. Maybe there was a cloak of invisibility we didn't know about, but there he was. Like, shocking.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You would think maybe the size could be an issue there.
Yeah.
Don't really understand why, based on just what we've seen in the NHL for the past 10 years. But yeah, I mean, this is a dynamic score. I'm very hyped about this pick.
I am so pumped about this.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, this seems like this is going to be a guy that develops into a piece for Nashville, as long as Nashville can kind of develop him the right way. You never say can't miss prospect. Never in a million years going to say can't miss prospect with somebody drafted 17, because we've seen the Predators miss on some can't miss prospects. But this is a guy I have a good feeling about. Somebody I do think you'll see a big part of the Predators lineup going forward. He is under contract on the Liga team for 2 more seasons, so he's gonna have some time to develop overseas. And yeah, I mean, we should see him in the World Juniors coming up here next year, see what he can do. Yeah, I mean, I feel good about this pick, and I think Preds fans probably should too.
Yes, I would agree. And not somebody, I think anybody spent a lot of time thinking, man, I wonder if Kemell would be a good fit in Nashville, because I don't think anybody thought there was going to be a chance for him. I think this is fantastic. When he was still on the board and when Nashville picked him, I thought there's no, that this is absolutely an ideal pick. David Poile, for all the frustration that I think Predators fans feel for the Philip Forsberg contract not getting done before the draft and all of that, I think
we're still mad about that.
Oh, we're still mad about that. But I do think he bought himself a slight reprieve, because this pick is fantastic. Predators fans should be so excited about this young man. I think, like you said, this is just a phenomenal player, but also a really good fit for Nashville down the road, I think.
Let's talk about, let's hear from Joakim Kemell a little bit. We know, of course, Nashville is a team that has a good history of drafting Finnish players.
Come on.
A couple of good ones on the team. So Joakim Kemell asked what it was like to kind of continue that Finnish tradition here in Smashville.
Yes, I have watched them playing, and it's really great to be same organization with them, and yeah.
What about Pekka Rinne? I'm sure Pekka is such a big name, and in Finland. What do you know about him and just as a player?
Yes, Pekka Rinne is a really big name, and he's a really good goalie, and everyone respects him.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you want to get on the fans' good side,
come on,
Rinne's kudos.
Yeah, and I love the little twinkle in his eye when asked about Pekka Rinne. Like, oh yeah, I know Pekka Rinne. But you think about this is, a great opportunity for him to come in. You've got UC Saros, you've got Mikael Granlund. Of course, you have the, legend of Pekka Rinne that just sort of wafts in the air at Bridgestone Arena. So for a young Finnish player, I think this is it's just fun. It's going to be fun. Nashville loves their Finns. We love our Finns. So I think it's really exciting, and I'm glad, Saros and Granlund, are there, and I'm sure that will kind of help be a little transition for the youngest Finn.
Well, we are not finished by a long shot today on the Locked On Predators podcast because there is a lot of other draft nonsense that
my
went
gosh.
on last night, including a couple surprises at the top and a few interesting trades. Let's put it like that. So we'll talk about that in a second. First, want to mention today's show brought to you by our friends at Bet Online. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. They got everything you need. Major League Baseball Major League Baseball, WNBA, MLS. They got your favorite Vegas casino games that you can play, anything like that. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information as well, including live betting, esports, scores, and more. Plenty of props. If you put money on Shane Wright being the number one pick in last night's draft, which was the odds-on favorite, I apologize to you. If you had your eye Slavkovsky going number one, congratulations. BetOnline could have helped you out there. And of course, BetOnline has plenty of sports scores, podcasts, and news to keep you up to date and keep you in the loop on everything you need to know to win some money. They're the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So we didn't have to wait long on draft night last night, Anne.
No.
The fireworks to start. We'll talk about some of the trades that happened beforehand in a second because, we're going to talk about the trades that happened last night. But the first big surprise, Uri Slavkovsky going over Shane Wright as the number one pick. Remember, Shane Wright, exceptional player status in the juniors. This was a guy that really for 2 years people had penciled in as the number one pick in this year's draft. A lot of people were comparing him and saying, he's the best player to come out of the draft in 5-6 years. A lot of people thought, this is a guy that was going to be a legitimate piece to build around. And all of a sudden at the last second, he winds up falling and Slavkovsky goes number one. We'll talk about Shane Wright's slide in a second, but first, instant reaction to Slavkovsky going number one, and because I know we both watched him in the Olympics.
Yes.
It was like that was our first indication that, damn, this guy is really good.
Yeah, you know what? I think everybody just sort of went into this assuming that Shane Wright, like you said, was going to be the first pick in the draft. But I also, if you listened around the league, so many teams were also really invested in Slavkovsky. And like you said, having watched him in the Olympics, he is eye-catching. And I wasn't super surprised that he was picked first. What happened after that first pick became a little bit surprising. But, even yesterday in talking with Eric Dene, we were talking about the first pick and he said, likely Shane Wright, but wouldn't be surprised if it was Slavkovsky. And that's sort of where I was too. I was excited for him. I really feel like he is an exceptional player and not taking anything away from Shane Wright. So my initial reaction was like, oh, okay, that's what we're going to do. And then as the picks, as 2 and 3 started going, I was like, oh, because it became a whole thing. But as far as a valid first pick in the draft, Slavkovsky is 100% a valid, number one pick.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think what really impressed teams was he had the Olympic performance, which really, I think, first caught a lot of people's eyes and kind of rose him. I think he came into the year probably like, top 5, 6, sort of in that range. And I think that was the first time a lot of people kind of slid him up. And then he followed that up in the World Championships and, his other leagues with just very, very strong performances across the board against, players above his age. And I know a lot of people say, oh, well, the Olympics, didn't have NHL players. World Championships are kind of like the whatever tournament you can't really determine. But if you're 17 and 18 years old, no matter if you're playing against guys in the AHL or NHL or people in Europe, there is an adjustment to play against older guys, veteran guys. And Slavkovsky went in there and thrived. And I think that was a big indication to me that, this guy might be more NHL ready and ready to excel in the NHL than people thought. And I kind of think maybe that was sort of, maybe the tipping point for Montreal, because I look at, Shane Wright, and I think still maybe the best all-around player in this draft.
Fair.
I compare him maybe to somebody like Patrice Bergeron when I watched a very smart two-way guy. But I think Slafkovsky, watching him, he's a guy that I think is going to wind up being like a perennial 100-point scorer. Like
Yes.
a guy that, tops 100 every single year, is that dynamic score. And when you look at somebody like Montreal, who even when they were good the past couple of years, even when they were sneaking into the playoffs, had issues scoring. And I think he's kind of going to be that, light up the world pace kind of guy that Montreal needs.
And I also think that Slafkovsky, went in and as he sat down with teams, I think he continued to raise his stock just in the conversations that they were having with him. And, I think he really impressed them. And I'm not saying at all that Shane Wright didn't do that. But one of the comments that you hear is how impressive he is, to sit down and talk hockey with. And I know Montreal brought him in right before the draft and kind of had some final conversations with him. And I think he really is impressive in that situation to sit and get to know him personally, but also to sit and discuss hockey. And so I think he just continued to build, just sort of build credit after the Olympics and through Worlds. And I'm not surprised. I think he's a really solid number one pick. I think he was a little unexpected, but I don't think you can argue his value.
Yeah. Let's talk about Shane Wright, because I think that to me was the biggest surprise.
Yes.
Devils maybe anticipated Shane Wright being there with number 2, but they wound up going defense with Nemec, which is fine.
Yeah.
Even our own Eric Dene said, he had him, right outside the top 2, and he gave that grade an A+. Just because, the Devils now have a pretty good defender to kind of build their team around. And of course, they had Nico Heishier and Jack Hughes up front.
Right.
Probably, didn't need another forward per se, although it's passed on him. The scary thing to me is Arizona taking Logan Cooley with number 3. I mean, it's interesting that the Coyotes pick the guy that going into the draft everybody thought they might pick. I didn't think that would happen with the guy who is number 1 on a lot of people's draft boards, still on the board there.
Yeah, I don't think nobody, I think, anticipated that Shane Wright was going to be available, after the second pick in the round. So it was a little bit head scratchy, like, okay, hey, Arizona, but they just they stuck to what they were going to do. And it's one of those questions where when you go into the draft, do you stick with your game plan or do you take the best player that's available on the board? They clearly stuck with their game plan. And not that Cooley is a horrible pick for Arizona, but it was this moment of do y'all want to take a second? Do you want to take a second and just relook? Just relook. I know you had 3 minutes, but you might want 3:05 on that. But no, they passed on it. And meanwhile, Seattle's going,
yeah. Well, and how about the Seattle Kraken now, who they got Matty Beniers last year, who is a very dynamic player. And now they have Shane Wright. So all of a sudden, the Seattle Kraken, who completely botched the expansion draft, now all of a sudden have 2 bona fide number 1 centers to build around. And, all of a sudden you're looking at a team with 2, like a top 1 and a number 2 center who, it's like Toronto that can roll out either Austin Matthews or John Tavares. Now they have 2 legitimate scoring lines that they can kind of build around. And so all of a sudden Seattle Kraken is now back on track.
Yes. I mean, I was thinking last night as I watched Shane Wright, finally go to the Kraken with the 4th pick, I thought our counterpart, Erica Ayala, had to be just dying because, like you said, you've got Matty Beniers and now you've got Shane Wright. I mean, that's a 1A, 1B situation for sure. That's those are two players that you can really build some things around. So Seattle had to walk out of that room feeling like it was Christmas, to end up with Shane Wright at the fourth pick and available. I mean, that was a gift for Seattle, and bodes well for them down the road, because like you said, it was a little rough out of the gate for Seattle.
Yeah. Let's take a second and talk about trades, shall we? Because this is something that sort of shapes the Central Division now. A couple other ones, but let's talk about the headliner, which was whatever the Blue Blazes, the Chicago Blackhawks, were doing yesterday. Started by sending Alex DeBrincat to Ottawa for trio of picks, including the number 1 pick or the number 7 pick in the draft this year, the first rounder, a second round pick later today, and a third round pick next year. Underwhelming, a very underwhelming return. And whenever I think about this trade, and I don't know if you've seen the movie Draft Day.
I have not.
It's with Kevin Costner. He's GM of the Cleveland Browns, and it follows him in the 12 hours from when he wakes up till the day when the draft pick comes in, and he winds up trading. He winds up trading 3 number 1 picks for the number 1 overall pick. And his mom calls him on the phone and says, "You sold a cow for magic beans." And that's to me. Now, look, here's my thing with the DeBrincat situation, and you can weigh in and let me know if you agree with it. The Blackhawks, I get it. I get what the counter argument to this is, which is, he's going to be a restricted free agent next year. The Blackhawks probably don't want to pay him the $9 million or so that he's going to be worth. But if you're a team like the Blackhawks, you desperately need players to build around. And you don't need to go searching in the draft for Alex DeBrincat when you have Alex DeBrincat. You have a legitimate 40-goal scorer, a guy that really doesn't need help. I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, well, he's just that good because he's playing with Kane." That's fine, but if you watch him play, he has a lot of dynamic to his game. And so to trade him, who's still young, he's 25. I get it. I know that's older than some teams want to build around, but he's, realistically, if the Blackhawks rebuild, if you can maybe hit some home runs and some good trades here or there, maybe 5-6 years, you're close to contending again. And DeBrincat's, on the wrong side of 30, but still very much in his prime. I don't understand why you would give up on a player like that for, let's be honest, was a bad package.
Yes.
And that's the thing. I know that the Blackhawks wanted to kind of sell now to get back into the first round. There's some players they liked in the draft. I get that. But it just seems like this was a trade for the sake of getting a deal done, because I would like to believe there was a lot better help that was out there for Alex DeBrincat.
I agree. I was really so shocked not when the trade happened, because I think that, this was something that everybody in the NHL kind of figured was going to happen, but the return on it was really surprising to me. As you read the return, I kept thinking, is there another comma? Is there another, you know what I mean? There's got to, and did you forget the last part? Because it really felt like an underwhelming deal, and not at all. I said, as we were kind of chatting offline with our On the Forecheck friends, it was like finding a pair of Louboutin heels at Goodwill. Sure, I'll pay $20 for them. You know what I mean? I felt like such a bad deal for Chicago. And I understand, like you said, all the reasons why they're looking to maybe trade him. But why is that the return that you settled on? It just really made no sense to me. No sense to me at all.
Yeah, it seems like it was a desperation play to get into the top 10. But like we said, it seems like there were, even maybe wait till after the draft when things settle down.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like there's better teams out there that are willing to, pay to win right now that would have
Right.
gotten you a much better deal.
Yes.
But that's my 2 cents. Again, I understand why the Blackhawks made that trade. I don't agree with it. One trade they did, I think, kind of nail was getting Kirby Dach, sending him to Montreal for a first-round pick in this year's draft and another third-round pick. Kirby Dach, he was kind of like a big player on the market, the number 3 overall pick a couple of years ago, but somebody who really hasn't found his footing in the NHL yet. And the Blackhawks were able to swap that for, another first-round pick.
Yeah, this isn't nearly as embarrassing a deal. It's a little bit, I will say this one's a little bit sad for me because I really feel like, Kirby Dach is a really talented player, but so much about success in the NHL is timing and location. And he just probably needs a different fit. And, again, this gets the Blackhawks back in the first round for another pick. And I'm telling you, I think Montreal had to be putting their feet up and smoking some serious cigars after last night, because with how this whole first round played out for them and coming away with Kirby Dach and feeling like, this is not a bad deal for either party, not a bad deal for either party, and hopefully will be, a good landing place for Kirby Dach, I think.
Yeah. Certainly still a lot of room to grow.
Yes.
So that's good for him. It looks like the Colorado Avalanche have a new goaltender. Avalanche looks like ending the Darcy Kemper era, but I guess it really could be error too. They give a 3rd and a 5th round pick to the Rangers for Alexander Gorgiev. Sounds like he and Francouz are going to be the number 1 and number 2 for the defending Cup champs next year. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, maybe not the most dynamic duo in net that I could put together in my mind, but I mean, if you're going to split net time and put 2 guys together, okay. It's just strange to me. Darcy Kemper I feel like he's just unappreciated. He's like one of those artists that's not going to be appreciated until after he dies, and I don't mean that like in a morbid way, but you know what I'm saying? How like, I don't mean that in a morbid way, but how some artists.
I understood.
Okay. Nothing, I don't wish anything bad on Darcy Kemper, but this is he's a goaltender who, I mean, Nashville can attest to. This is somebody who can play in net at times.
Do you think it's the Sox thing?
Honest to Pete,
they were put off by the Sox.
I could not have him on my team under those circumstances.
It's like, look, Darcy, you've won a Stanley Cup. We like you, but the Sox.
It's embarrassing.
I'm afraid we're gonna have to pass unless you go.
We're gonna, yeah.
I mean, it's for Colorado. I mean, it seems like a cap move. We saw the same thing with Howard last year. It's like, look, respect what you've did. You really helped us, but the team in front of you, that's what's going to win us the cup, not necessarily who's in goal.
Very true.
And Pavel Francouz did play very well when he was in there last year. Alexander Gorgiev has played well when he's been in there. A little bit inconsistent, but this is Colorado kind of has leeway to maybe experiment with some goaltenders next year. And plus, they now have cap flexibility to maybe try to lock up some of those free agents because there's going to be a lot of people who need a new contract, quite a hefty contract as well.
Very true.
Yeah, so interesting there. Yeah.
It was a day one. It was a day one.
Hey, there's more draft. Round 2 begins today, probably around the time this is starting in about 10 Central. The rest of the draft comes through today. And is there anything you would like to see the Preds do or address?
Yeah, I think they right now they currently don't have a second round pick, and I think that's okay. I don't want to see them do anything like super, super crazy, but I do think their next pick needs to be a defenseman. And that's what I expect that they'll do. I expect that they'll be looking for a defenseman come next pick.
Yeah, I think defense. I think a lot of us thought that they were maybe going to go there
Mm-hmm.
day one. I don't think they anticipated Kemell falling that much.
No.
I think defense is still going to be a big theme. It wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the next early-ish round picks, like
Mm-hmm.
round 3 and 4, come on the blue line and hope maybe you can find a diamond in the rough in that range.
Yes. Yes, I would agree. I think that's where most people are going to be looking.
Yeah. Well, we will be here to talk about it on Monday, and there's probably going to be more moves and trades and all that fun stuff. So you're definitely going to want to stay tuned to Monday's Locked On Predators podcast, because we are going to be here to recap all of the madness. And in less than a week, unrestricted free agent starts. And Phil Forsberg's not re-signed yet.
Can't even.
So yeah, there's definitely going to be stuff to talk about next week on the Locked On Predators podcast. Until then, Ann, where can the people find your work online?
You can find my work at ontheforecheck.com, and you can find me on Twitter at AnnK_Mama on Ice.
I'm Nick Morgan. You can find my work at ontheforecheck.com. Follow me on Twitter at _NSMorgan. And while you're there, follow the show on Twitter at LO_Predators. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let us know what you think of the Joakim Kemell pick. Let us know what you thought about the craziness in the first round. Let us know if you think the Blackhawks made a bunch of dumb moves, or if there's more to it that maybe people aren't exactly seeing right now. That's going to do it for today's Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back Monday with brand new episodes recapping the rest of the draft and any craziness that comes out of it. We'll see you then.